Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Cheyenne Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Cheyenne Hills at CheyenneHills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
We are across the street and around the world, Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast, and welcome back.
It's good to be here.
Being back from the dead, this is like Jesus appearing again. You're
Wow.
just like, yeah, you're here.
You just went there. Boy, I'm honored. But I can tell you, I wish I was like Jesus. I'm striving. I'm not there yet.
I know you are. And I don't know, the last time I remember we talked, and it's just been a month, two months.
I think it has. It's been most of
maybe
the
all
summer.
Yeah, we took a summer break. So it's really good to see you again. And I honestly, we've walked across the parking lot and we jumped into this studio. So we haven't really chatted a lot about what we're going to do today and where we're going. But here's the last I remember we got when we set down the last time we talked is you're going to go see Os Guinness. You're going to speak.
It was wonderful.
Okay,
yeah.
Give me up to speed.
So between when I last saw you and now, it was DC. That was wonderful. There's so much to unpack there. And then after that, Virginia, and then Florida for another meeting. Okay. But there's been a lot of really neat things that have happened this summer. It's been very busy and a lot of good things on the horizon. But that trip to DC was amazing.
Well, tell us what's the highlights.
Well, boy.
Now, you spoke at this conference.
I did.
All right.
I did.
And
it was
topic,
a real
what
honor.
was your topic? And
so
little rundown.
Yeah. So first of all, it was amazing. I was sandwiched between a congressman and Os Guinness. Actually, I had the privilege of introducing Os Guinness.
Wow.
And so introducing a hero is extraordinary.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So as I jumped into that, I began to talk about the subject of fear. And of course, I'm talking primarily to legislators, congressmen, and people who work in public policy from across the nation. And there's a lot of opportunity for fear.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a challenge sometimes with being a Christian who actually stands up for your belief systems. People don't always agree with you. It's amazing, if that's a revelation, I'm sorry.
It'd be so much easier if everybody just would agree
right?
with me.
Yeah.
Right, then it wouldn't have any conflict.
I know.
That'd be wonderful.
If only.
Anyway.
But so that meeting was extraordinary. One of the evenings, actually, we went to a place called the Capitol Hill Club, and we had, I forget if it was 24 or 26 members of Congress there, including the speaker, the minority floor leader, and a senator. Anyway, it's just amazing. But as they gave their testimony of faith,
oh wow,
it was amazing.
Oh,
it was
wow.
really good.
That's really
but also, there are
encouraging.
good people involved in government.
Yeah, that's good.
And so there are certain people that just want to torch everybody and everything.
Yeah, right.
And that spirit of anarchy, by the way, what most people, and this is going to sting like the Dickens, but Karl Marx actually ascribed to that kind of anarchy to try to create that. Now, that isn't to say that everybody in elective office is perfect. But when a person's first reaction is torch everything,
yes,
that's not good.
No, absolutely. Yeah. That's right.
So anyway, that was just wonderful. And that led to the second meeting I had was in Richmond, Virginia, where they had me speaking was at a place where Patrick Henry had married the proprietor's daughter. It was called the Hanover Tavern. Now, tavern back then, I always have to add this, it's the old word for an inn. Okay. It's where they did have a restaurant and everything there, but that's where people came to stay. Okay. And so he was just
same
a young
speech
guy.
Both places, or
no? Well, one of them was the same, and then I had an extra speech.
Oh, no kidding.
But it was amazing, very historic. Right across the street was the Hanover Courthouse, where he delivered his very first court case. Patrick Henry did. Okay. And it was a religious liberty case.
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
when you're talking about religious liberty in a place where that's the seedbed of it right there. It was so
when he
important.
Said, he's not the one that said, give me liberty or give me death.
Did.
He said that.
He did.
And so was he talking about, was it in the context of religious liberty, you think?
No, sir. So, of course, in the preceding paragraph of that particular speech, he talks about how even now the English are thundering on the plains of Boston.
Gotcha, right.
But it's really intriguing because I actually 2 days later had a chance to visit. It was called St. John's Church. is still there. It's a historic site. That's where he gave his speech. The context of that was the governor had dismissed the House of Burgesses, which is what their assembly was called before they became a state.
Okay.
So they actually had to flee Williamsburg. So they went up the James River to Richmond. And then the biggest place, the only place that could house everybody, General Washington, this is before he was General Washington, but all of those guys, they met together at St. John's Church.
Okay.
And that's where, and you can see, I have a photo of it now, you can see where he had sat before he got up. And there's still question today. He didn't stand in the pulpit, but most people think that he actually kind of walked around as he gave his speech. And he was delivering it to 200 people or more in this big structure. But what's so interesting, and I didn't know this until a class that I took early this summer, he was doing that, pushing back also against the Anglican clergy of the day. So there was an altar that was built, it was designed after the ideas of Archbishop William Laud. And he was one that really began to wrestle against religious liberty.
Oh, wow.
And so he's giving this give me liberty or give me death. And he, because of his, he went to Presbyterian and Baptist churches when he was a young man, when it was illegal to do so in Virginia. And so this man knows full well what religious liberty's like. And so he's saying that in front of a place that is showing the opposite of what he's trying to say.
Gotcha. Wow.
The context
right in the teeth of the lion, right there. That's tough. Well, that's the kind of courage. I mean, you talk about fear.
Yeah.
What can you unpack just a little bit more of what? I'm anxious to hear what you had to say about fear. Or maybe did you use a passage that you sprung board off of?
First of all, I went back to the passage in the New Testament where it says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind.
Perfect.
But then I launched into that from the book of Exodus.
Okay.
And when you find the children of Israel trapped between the sea and the Egyptian army,
right,
you see this struggle that they have. And one of the challenges they were facing was, as they're looking at these dust clouds coming in, the Bible says that they begin to in Hebrew, if you read Hebrew, it literally is to shriek in terror.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so God had already promised a way of escape. And Moses has led them out there, and they see the dust clouds coming, and they begin to attack Moses.
Yep.
And they're shrieking in terror. And then finally Moses turns and says, see the salvation of the Lord. And
I don't think Moses had a clue what he was going to do yet.
No.
He just knew that God was going to show up.
He knew God led him there.
Yeah, what a great picture. Yeah.
And a lot of times in our own lives, and we've talked about how God has used different things in your life that it does sometimes not everything is clearly mapped out. I don't know the next 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
But I do know that God's with me.
Yeah, God's in it.
And so,
I just, one of my favorite things to say, we just had this men's retreat, and one of the things I talked about fear just a little bit, and my comment was, and I've heard this from another pastor, is that God did not give us a spirit of fear. Somebody else put that there.
That's good.
He gave us a spirit of power and of love and a sound mind. And so just adding that, don't forget where fear comes from.
That's good. I like that.
We all deal with it. Yeah. And what it looks like to be courageous in our day. I mean, we say at the end of every one of these, be strong and very courageous. I mean, to have courage in the midst of, from my vantage point, it's almost in the midst of like, where is your God? Where is he working? Because it's hard to see good things that we'd say, okay, there's a God thing and there's a God thing. Right. Now, there's some other things. There's some things that you're going to bring some good news for us. And I'm excited to see those things. But sometimes it's pretty easy just to see the gloomy stuff. And
it's true.
Like, man, God, where are you at in this whole thing? And to have the courage to say, even though just like Moses, I don't know where it's going to come from, but see the salvation of our God.
Isn't that powerful?
Yeah, it is.
And that's one of the things the world expects us to get caught up in that. One of the interesting statements that Pharaoh made. So you have to remember, of course, the children of Israel had just left Egypt behind. And after that 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, the people of Egypt literally were giving their gold and silver, just leave us.
Yeah, just get out of here. Yeah.
And in the very next chapter, Pharaoh then says, those guys are going to be entangled in the wilderness, caught up in the struggle.
Gotcha.
And, the world kind of thinks of us that way.
Yeah.
It thinks of everyone that way. It's a struggle out there, and people are going to get caught up. They're going to lose heart. And that's one of the places where Satan expects the Christian to go, and the Christian is called to not lose heart.
Right.
God is with us.
Right.
And so even when we're not caught up in the wilderness, the next thing is you run into a Red Sea.
Yeah.
And God is with us there too.
Right.
And where we see God's presence oftentimes is in the most difficult circumstances.
That's true. No
Yeah.
question about that. Wow. Good picture. And it reminds me of a discussion we had, I don't know how long ago it was, but I think Mark's kind of fed on that, and he knew where the hot button was on to have the people come against the Christian, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he would specifically point out the Christian, but it was like, if you would call, that person a hater, well, that's one of the most difficult thing for a Christian to deal with, right? And we fear more than anything to be called a hater.
Right.
So what we do is we don't stay in the speaking truth in love. We'll just back away because we don't want conflict, and we don't want to do as Moses, if to use your illustration, in the midst of, I don't know, the controversy or the struggle, to still stand there and still speak truth, still speak faith, still speak hope.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great word. That's a good challenge for us all.
That's a great point. That's exactly what they were doing. They were maligning his motives.
Okay.
And by that, what I mean is they were saying, you led us out here. It's better that we were eating leeks and onions and garlic back in slavery. And so they were basically saying, you led us out here to die. They were maligning his motives.
Yeah.
That happens so much in the church context today.
Yeah.
As you try to state truth, and literally you're trying to reach up in and help someone either through an addiction or a struggle that they're having in their life, or something that is in contention with reality itself. You love them, and then people begin to malign your motives. And that often happens in the church, where people begin to, well, I guess I'm not going to say anything else. And they back away from the calling God has called us toward. And so we have to be truth and love.
Well, as we talked about not long ago, that's being an owner and not a hireling.
That's right.
Hireling will run. If we're an owner, if we're invested in this, we're going to stand. We're kingdom people. We're invested, and it's like, whatever that means, we need to be willing to stand there and take on whatever the fear is,
right?
Because we got to speak truth and hope, and there. I don't know where people are getting hope and truth and peace if you don't have God. I don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah. When you look at the struggles in our society, there isn't a lot of hope outside of Christ. You
brought up society, so I'm going to go there, because one of the things that's like right now is this whole struggle in Afghanistan. And, I read all these stories. I know you get more information because of your position than I do. But I hear there's a lot of Christian missionaries. I hear there's a lot of Christians that are trapped. Do you have any insight news? What do you know?
Well, 3 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago, I had a friend in Virginia reach out and said, hey, we're trying to get through to our senators there, but because of their political leanings, they're not listening to anything that would disagree with the mismanagement of that withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Okay.
So could you reach out to your senator and congressman? And that's what I did. I called our senators and our congressmen, got right through, and was able to talk. It was really neat. This is one of the wonderful things about Wyoming.
Well, this is a wonderful thing about you. You actually get to talk to them. If I call in and get to share my view, I get the hireling.
Oh no, those guys! I know they would respect you a lot.
No,
but
great.
The cool thing is, I heard, "Hello, welcome to Senator Lemus's office.
Yeah.
How may I help you?" And I said my name, and then shortly after, the young lady said, Nathan, is that you?
Oh, no kidding.
It was a young lady. Her dad was, I grew up and he was one of my school teachers.
Oh, my
That's one of the coolest
gosh.
things about Wyoming.
That is really cool.
Yeah, I love it.
That's
But
great.
anyway, there were 3 families. They are Hazari. In Afghanistan, they have several different ethnic groups there.
Okay.
And one of them is treated very, very poorly, the Hazari families. And secondly, this was a family that had also become Christians and had begun to minister the gospel in places where no one like us could go. We don't know either the culture, the language,
Sure.
or anything else.
Right.
And so they reached out, and I just began to say, listen, here is their entire. They have a green card status. They literally are green card status American people. They will lose their lives for a multitude of reasons. And so I reached out, and I did get a call back from Senator Lummis's office from a really good person who works on foreign policy. And he said, Nathan, right now, as a lady, she said, Nathan, there's a lot of things that are falling apart so rapidly. We're going to do our best. We're going to get them on the list. But there's no guarantee of how any of that's going to work. And of course, it was sadly, I think the next day or the day after, that the young man from Jackson, the young Marine, was killed in those explosions.
Right.
But that is a very, very sad circumstance.
It's just heart-wrenching. And I've been sent some video footage from some people, and it's like, I mean, it's just gruesome, horrible. And if this is what's happening in real time, I mean, I can't prove that this is the footage from real time, but it's awful. And it's just like, oh Lord, please. It's the same kind of thing we saw, not that long ago from Syria. And there was a whole lot more of a Christian persecution than I think we ever really knew. I think there was a lot of persecution going around, but our brothers and sisters, it's just heart-wrenching. You go, man, I feel so helpless. So I'm glad you got through, and I'm glad I will be hoping and praying for this family.
So that's one of the things, as Christians here in America, there are brothers and sisters of ours all over the world.
I know that all the time.
And
the voice of the martyrs is 300,000 a year. I think is the number you always hear, and maybe now it's probably exponentially higher. I don't know, but no, this has been a tough season. Humbling. It's just like, wow, are we really seeing this debacle that we're seeing here? And it's just hard to believe this could happen.
I felt as I've traveled through airports and a lot just recently, I felt a lot of people who seem to have lost their heart.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, it is a wonderful thing to be an American.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people doubting themselves right now because there have been some very poor decisions made by some folks in charge.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to handle that delicately.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But that also, this is the grandest, most exceptional country on the planet for a reason. It's because when you watch tens of thousands of people trying to get the last plane out, why do you think that's happening? Yeah. It's because we're the symbol of freedom and hope.
Oh my gosh.
And when that hope leaves, they're left hopeless. America is hope.
Clinging
to the world.
on the sides of those planes. Yeah. I mean, that just broke my heart. I had watched that one time and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine that kind of desperation to because they knew what was going to happen even before we really knew how severe the Taliban would be. And so I don't know. It's a sad terrible deal.
Yeah, Christians can find themselves in the same way. This is a weird roundabout way to get there.
Go for it. We need to get out of this. This is I don't know.
This is one of the most amazing things. I think it was last week. My littlest kid came up to me. It was late at night, and we had already put him all to bed, and he comes back up, and he says, "Dad, I have a feeling." No, so this was just before we all put him all to bed. He said, "I have a feeling like there's no tooth fairy."
Okay.
Now, I got to say, we have played that up quite a lot.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever.
So
done
what's
this.
a tooth fairy pay around your house?
Well, it's only $2, and we're kind of cheap,
That's the going rate.
But to make it special, we were using those little metal silver, dollars.
for sure. Yeah.
Anyway, and it was one where occasionally we would forget. We had the kids. They would open the back door and say, "Tooth fairy, I lost my tooth."
Oh my gosh!
Our neighbors must have thought we were nuts.
No,
but anyway,
yeah.
and then of course we would
Those
forget.
are those Christian guys over there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We would forget, and then we'd have to say, well, the tooth fairy was on the opposite side of the globe, or it was Christmas, or whatever it
Right.
was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he came up and he said, I have a feeling like there's no tooth fairy.
Oh, no.
And so Christy looked at me, my wife, and she said, Nathan, should we tell him? And I said, yeah, there is no tooth fairy. And everybody was kind of quiet for a little bit. And finally, about 15 minutes later, they were all supposed to be asleep at this point. The littlest one comes up and he's got tears running down. And there's no tooth fairy. And I said, well, I want you to think about this, son. This is amazing. I said, you had inside of you a feeling that the tooth fairy isn't real. That's how you said it. You said, I have a feeling the tooth fairy isn't real. And I said, that's the amazing thing about truth.
Oh, wow.
And the amazing thing about things that are not true, there's something that you can tell is just not quite right.
Yeah.
I said, I want to ask you a question.
That's good.
Do you feel and understand that God is real?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I do. And I said, I want you to remember this moment.
And that's
because
good.
according to Romans chapter 1, God has made himself manifest in the creation around us. He's implanted himself in your heart, and you know it to be true.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you take the tooth fairy, and there are things are not true. We call that common sense. It was a teachable moment for a 10-year-old.
Man, that's really good.
And so as we delved into that, this is one of the things I think every Christian has to remember. God is real, and he's present. He's here, and the world around us manifests itself that God is real. And so we can't lose heart. Even as the world is falling apart, God's there.
We know that is so good. And that's what we've got to remember, that this is, we don't live in a tooth fairy existence. God is real. Even don't know exactly what he's doing or why he's allowing and all that. There's a lot of things we can't figure out.
Right.
And you would think as pastors, as rubbing elbows with Os Guinness, we still don't have all the answers.
Right.
But we just know that God is in control and
He's there.
And God is good.
Amen.
Well, we're going to land it there. There's nothing, how can you top the tooth fairy right there? We got to land this thing, man. That was actually,
I've never heard that phrase before.
You redeemed this, that tooth fairy thing really, really well. So, but anyway, thank you so much again for joining us. And Nathan, glad to have you back. And I'm going to tell you to be strong and very courageous, but I want to end it with this way. God did not give us a spirit of fear. Somebody else put that there. God bless you. Thanks for joining us.